Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. In 1996, a mental poison was unleashed in this country. Fox News. Its creator and CEO, Roger Ailes, used tabloid-style coverage, outrageous right-wing opinion hosts, xenophobia, and a steadfast belief in the lowest common denominator to shepherd the news company into becoming the most successful in the country. He also bullied politicians, journalists, employees, and women. Well, he didn't just bully women, he exploited, assaulted, groped, blackmailed, some would say he raped. Ailes was a sick person, and the new Showtime series, The Loudest Voice, does not shy away from that. In it, Russell Crowe, Naomi Watts, Seth MacFarlane, Sienna Miller, and Annabelle Wallis unflinchingly tell the story of the creation of Fox News and its Dr. Frankenstein. Let's take a look.
Television is the most powerful force in the world. We're gonna give them a vision of the world the way it really is. And the way they want it to be. If we can do that, then they will never change the channel. People don't want to be informed. They want to feel informed.
Is Rupert really as brilliant as they say?
He hired me, didn't he?
This is no time for politics.
It's war.
Anyone outside Fox is the enemy, and we do not talk about what we do.
I spoke with the president. We'd like your help moving forward.
Whatever you need, Carl. Fox News will back it. Gretchen,
Roger.
I have 2 Miss Americas. Not that one yet.
He berates me constantly. He's a bully.
Give me a little twirl.
You're out of line, Roger.
I will do anything to protect my people.
There is no Fox without you.
I need absolute loyalty. This is our time. We will make history.
Everybody, please welcome Naomi Watts, Sienna Miller, Seth MacFarlane, and Annabelle Wallis. Let's hear it. Guys, I think you did an amazing job with this program. I've seen the first 4 episodes. As you can tell, I come from one side of the political spectrum based off of my wildly slanted opening intro. But I found that the series itself found a very objective way of going about one of the most unobjective characters we've had, or subjective characters we've had in this country. I think that the 4 of you did a wonderful job finding a way to present non-judgmental performances of people that we have judged, myself personally, a lot over the last 10, 15 years. Annabelle, I want to start with you and your performance. It's a harrowing performance of a woman who was really at the center of a lot of this controversy and who stepped forward in the wake of Gretchen Carlson's revelations about Ailes' treatment of women. Can you talk about what you learned about this woman and what it was like to sort of dive into her experiences?
Well, Laurie Luhn was a executive at Fox that rose to be the head talent booker, and she fell into a coercive relationship with Roger Ailes, and it's well documented that they had an affair for 20 years. I think I learned so many things from a very fascinating woman, a woman who I believe did what she did, in a very male-dominated world in order to survive, and I think, she definitely is the victim in this story, and she bore the brunt of a very powerful man doing what he did to many, but it was important to tell her side of the story, and I hope that it moves people, and I hope that it's cathartic in a way for victims of this type of abuse in all walks of life and all genders. So, I learned a lot.
Yeah, I found your scenes with Russell to be unflinching and unsparing in how obsessed with power and control he was, and how much of that was inflicted upon Laura at that time. Sienna, you play Elizabeth Ailes, right? Yeah, Roger's wife of 23rd. How long was she married to him? Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
No, it's from the
it was
90s,
basically like the mid 90s.
yeah.
Yeah, around the creation of Fox News up until his passing. Someone who, to me, it seems like starts to become him, and she idolizes him so much and idolizes his power and what she thinks of his power. She almost wants to become a version of him. She wants to impress him as much as he has impressed her. Did you see that as well? I especially think that with the Putnam County Ledger.
With the Putnam County News. I think
Yeah,
she was incredibly devoted to him. And I think as the story goes on, they're just kind of involved in the power of Roger, what that's becoming, the entity that he is. And it does kind of corrupt, for sure. But I think they were also very devoted and very, very happily married in their own way, until obviously it went very south. I don't know whether it's his influence rubbing off on her or whether she just, she became affected by fear and paranoia. They were both very, very paranoid. And I think that might have had an influence on her too.
I love the scenes where she's walking into the Putnam County News and she's saying to herself or to the new star editor that she's brought along, basically, we're going to turn this place around. We're going to make it a real news organization. And there's all these sort of local reporters who are like, we really just want to cover, like, the local basketball game.
Jam-making weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Naomi, you are portraying Gretchen Carlson, who is essentially the woman who brought down Roger Ailes after a number of years of having to be his employee as well as kind of his victim as well. And you have this wonderful scene where he asks you to twirl, or Roger asks Gretchen to twirl. And it's such a nuanced moment of how you play that on your face and how that affects you, yet you feel like that is also part of your job or the only way forward. Can you talk about doing that scene with Russell?
Yeah, I think it was really beautifully written on the page and a perfect nuanced example of how that abuse worked. And yes, you had to deliver. And I think Gretchen, like many of the women at Fox, was trying to soldier on and play ball and toe the company line. And so as humiliating as it was, she valued her job and wanted to stay. And
there's also a sense of how everything becomes normalized within this kind of toxic men's club that has been
which
fostered
gives you,
there.
Yeah, an example of how it existed. Definitely a male-driven company. Women didn't get the promotions that men did. It wasn't equal rights at all. And Gretchen was someone, she wasn't just a pretty face. She is highly educated, worked really hard, a musical background, and wanted to push back because she wasn't agreeing with the way she was treated. And so that's when they figured out that she was becoming more and more of a problem and tried to sort of push her away bit by bit, and including taking her from the morning show to the afternoon at the peak of her highest ratings. So she was becoming more and more of a problem, and she dealt with a lot as she went on, including sexual harassment. So hopefully this story is a story of female empowerment and connecting with stories like Laurie Luhn and Gretchen Carlson's is a way to help bring other people who have been disempowered and have them speak up and learn ways to feel safe about protecting themselves. And I think voices are being heard now finally, which is great.
I love the look. I mentioned it before, but the look that you give Russell when he asks you to twirl, there's so much thought going across your face as to how she should handle this moment, how she should handle it in the future. And you almost see the light bulb in her eyes, whether you intentionally did this or not, that she could record it or that she has to do something about this at some point in her career. Were you thinking about that, about all of those ideas when you sort of crafted that look that says so much?
So, those are the kind of nuanced moments that you want to bring in, the tiniest of moments that tells a lot of story. Yes, she tried her best to operate within that system and how it was built, but plotting how she could find a way. And it was hard to, once you've got that Fox stamp on you, who else is going to hire you? And
Not me, obviously.
I have that same problem.
Well, Seth, that is interesting. You, for a long time, you were at Fox, and I know that Fox News was, operated completely separate from Fox Entertainment or 20th Century Fox, right, and Fox TV. But I'm wondering if there's a catharsis for you because you are, an outspoken liberal and Democrat, and you've spoken out about Fox News, I think, especially in the last few years in the wake of Trump. Is there a catharsis for you in getting to play a character or a part in this show?
I also have a scene where Roger asks me to twirl. It is nowhere near as impactful. But
you didn't have the same look. You were kind of excited and thrilled at the moment.
I'm not as skilled.
Yeah.
But it's yeah. I have it's very public. How segmented my relationship with Fox is. I've been there for a long time. I've made no secret about the fact that I think the news division is irresponsible. But I also have close relationships with a lot of people in the company and at the upper levels of the company. It remains hard to reconcile that. And they knew I was doing this. I told them, and everyone was fine with it. It's a strange position to be in, to kind of be straddling these two worlds. But the subject matter is so compelling. Even aside from that, it's so different than anything I've been a part of that it was just kind of too good to pass up.
Do you feel like you rarely get Brian Lewis, in a lot of ways, is the straight man in the whole Fox News executive atmosphere. That's almost what ends up being the thing that pushes him out later. He's constantly pushing against Roger just a little bit to say, like, look, we can't have Glenn Beck say that Barack Obama's racist against white people, and everyone's telling Brian, shut up, Brian, this is making us money. Was it interesting, or was it special for you to play someone who was essentially the straight man in these boardrooms? Not the comic foil in a way?
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice sort of simple kind of classic arc for this guy as he sort of develops a conscience about everything that's going on. I have to figure there are probably a lot of people like that within that company who are, who do the work and, assist this entity that is massively successful and undeniably makes billions of dollars, but at the same time, you got to look in the mirror every once in a while and say, okay, what am I doing here? And I think that's
or your grandparents.
What's that?
Or your grandparents. You say, oh, what am I doing here? It's killing them.
Yeah. It's an interesting arc. I mean, it was a nice, clear thing for me to latch on to, particularly coming into this from, such a different world.
Is Brian Lewis, I mean, he's someone who is the only person I would imagine would maybe offer himself outside of Gretchen or maybe offer themselves as some sort of consultant for the story. Were you able to meet him or talk to him?
My research came entirely from Gabe's book, from Gabe. Every time I do this, I keep wanting to say Gabe Kaplan's book. Gabe Sherman's book. And it was, massively helpful in researching this guy. It's interesting. There's not a lot of information out there about Fox News. It's this sort of mysterious, shadowy place that kind of keeps to itself. And so you have to dig a little bit. But that was what was so surprising and fascinating about Gabe's book. I mean, it's something like 600 interviews that he conducted, and painted a picture of a place that, even I, having worked for the same company for years, was relatively unaware of.
Were you able to meet Laura at all and talk to her?
I wasn't, but I did have 6 hours of interview tape that Gabe Sherman provided me with, and it was fascinating. I mean, it was an incredible way to inform the psychology of a person who's been under the oppressive rule of someone who is both psychologically and sexually abusive to them. And just really, it was harrowing, you know, and for me, I then felt very indebted to her. I don't think she feels overly comfortable about the show coming out. Who would, if it was your life? And I just felt incredibly protective, and that she, as a victim in her own story, paved the path for a conversation now that we're having that will perhaps allow others to speak or, yeah, come to some peace in their own journey with what they've witnessed. And it's a through line to all of us, really. So I didn't meet her, but I definitely feel her. I carry her with me every day, and I had enough from Gabe to feel like I did my bit, you know. Yeah.
There's a scene where after Laura tells Roger that she doesn't want to what?
Laurie.
Oh, excuse me, Laurie. I apologize.
Jerk.
Only filled with
No,
paper
it's okay.
Fox News. No other knowledge whatsoever.
Typical.
Just ranting about Fox News. I don't even know who you guys are.
You're as thorough as they are.
Yeah, that's true. Just political rants over here. That's it. No facts. Just feelings. So I'm curious. You know, there's this scene where Laurie tells Roger that she doesn't want to do this anymore, and he basically tells her that she has to find his replacement, her replacement, implying that this replacement will also be his sexual partner in some ways, or you know, another mistress that he can dominate and control. And it's this fascinating moment where we want to watch this and think of Roger Ailes as the lone bad actor, you know, in the world who does something like this, but we're learning more and more that Laurie's story is quite common in places of power like this and in places of secrecy. What is it like to shine a light and be representative, not just of Laurie's story, but I think of lots of different kinds of stories that we're hearing more and more about in the last, 3-4 years?
It's important. It's a truth. You know, I think that particularly around. Wait, can you answer the question again? I lost my train of thought.
Oh, that's right. What is it like to be?
I had a really great answer.
To represent, to play a character who isn't just about this one person, but is representative of a sort of a culture and industries as a whole that can oftentimes operate in this way and shield powerful men from the atrocities that they're committing, specifically against women.
Yeah. Well, when I read the script, you know, Harvey Weinstein had just been. It all come out about him, and there was the Me Too movement, and it's so much in the zeitgeist of my generation, and it will be a defining conversation about the time that we're in. And I thought to myself, I'm so overwhelmed at how to even participate in the right way and how to do justice for anybody who's been through this. And I read this script, and I read Laurie, and I researched about her life and her journey with it, and I thought, what better way to participate or do your bit than portray the truth and hope that it's, like I said, cathartic and somehow be an embodiment of survival through it, but that there is no shame in speaking up, and that we all should. But really, yeah, just feeling honored to bring to light something that is not often portrayed in what we do enough in a truthful way. So I'm very happy to be part of something that was brave and shining a light on it. Yeah.
Sienna, Naomi, was there a part of that for you in taking on this project? Obviously, you care about the character and you want to play the character and sort of focus on the individual moments within the scenes that you can portray, but was there a part of you in the wake of a lot of the news that's coming out that it feels like you're getting the chance to do something with this project?
Yeah, I think you said it beautifully, by the way. And for Gretchen, I think taking on that role, you know, how she stood up and defended herself and said, no, I'm in charge of myself, that I will not be squashed by a man just because he's powerful. I have my own power, I have my own self-worth, and I will continue to push back and I will not be gotten rid of. And so how she got her ducks in a row, literally by herself, and managed the whole thing for a year before she took him down was deeply impressive, and absolutely a story of empowerment, and one that should, you know, be commended, because out of that, she really was the first in our lifetime to bring down someone of that level of power, and then the Me Too movement was kind of on the back of that, and suddenly you've got a whole cultural movement that will be witnessed, that we've all witnessed, and will have made such an impact that we can look back on it, and her name should definitely be in that mix at the forefront. And so it's great at my age to be taking on roles that have, you know, that level of substance in them. I'm not playing the best friend or the girlfriend or the...
Have you ever?
I have, definitely.
I've paid attention to your work since Mulholland Drive, and I feel like you've always gotten some pretty meaty, juicy, like wonderful roles. I don't think I've ever thought of Naomi Watts as like...
I've been lucky, but this feels really substantial, and I'm really proud of it, and she's wildly heroic in what she was... You know, she was the reluctant hero, but inadvertently brought on this sexual harassment movement, the Me Too, and that hopefully empowers other women and makes them feel safer about telling their own stories, because it's heartbreaking. It's gone on for too long, and things were absolutely due for a massive, massive shift. And now the Time's Up movement's come out of that, and you've got, like, certainly in our industry, we've seen massive changes behind the camera, in front of the camera, female-driven stories being told all the time now, and these are projects that weren't getting off the ground before, and now you've got female directors. I've got another movie coming out. It's written by a woman, directed by a woman, and, you know, it's called Ophelia, by the way, so that's a shift in itself, not Hamlet. So it's good. I think we can feel encouraged about how things have moved, particularly for the next generation.
Well, Sienna, I know you just had a film come out called American Woman, where you had said that you felt it wouldn't have been made, or the story wouldn't have been told 5 or 6 years ago or so. It feels like this story was really pushed to the forefront. I think I read an interview. So could just be making stuff up. And
you know, your fake news.
Yeah, fake news begins right here, guys.
I feel like the story would have been told, but it's really it's a view of life from the perspective of a woman, and often those women are on the peripheral, and it's very much a male story. So this is one woman's experience of her life through her own eyes, which I'd never had an opportunity of doing before.
Last time you were here,
yeah.
I had said, I had said that you were often cast as peripheral parts, and I was so happy to see you in The Lost City of Z, because it was one of the few peripheral parts where it felt like somebody really dug into what you were good at and gave you an amazing role and tapped and was like, well, this won't just be a peripheral part. Let's make this a major part of the story. Mm-hmm. And it seems like you're sort of jumping from that into something like American Woman as well, and looking for more parts like that.
Yeah, I think all of us want to play parts that are you're in control of a story, and you're not just a sort of feeder for a larger plot. It's wonderful to see the world through a woman's eyes, and I think it's long overdue. But I do feel, like Naomi said, like we all agree that the world is shifting, and these stories about women tend to do really well. I mean, there's enough of a market for it that it deserves to be invested in. So we're all very happy.
Absolutely. I think we have time for a couple questions from the audience. Who has a question?
Hi, my question is to all of you. How do you personally deal with the fact of making history and being influenced for many people in the world? Has your vision about it changed somehow over the years? And who is a famous person which made the biggest impact on your life?
Well, let's start with the last question. Who's a famous person that made the biggest impact on your life? Oh, that was the easy one.
I'm gonna forget it.
Do you have one?
Meryl?
Great.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Meryl.
Good stuff.
Meryl.
Damn fine actress. Do you want to go with Meryl as well?
Yeah, why don't we all go with Meryl?
Meryl.
I think that's the.
Didn't she just turn 70 this weekend, right?
Happy birthday,
I think so.
Meryl.
Happy birthday, Meryl Streep. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Meryl. Happy birthday to you. And many more. One more question. Right here.
First, I have to say that I don't think Anna and G.I. Joe was a peripheral part. I love that movie. But anyway, I know Seth's perspective on this, but certainly you can chime in as well. How influential do you think mass media is in the U.S. as well as in the U.K.? I've just talked to my daughter this morning about the whole Brexit madness, and people, I remember were interviewed, they said they voted for it, but they didn't even know what it was about. So I just want to find out your perspectives on that.
I think the media has an enormous influence on the world that we're living in, and I think it's a real battle with the amount of exposure and communication that we're faced with this day and age that, it's something to be very wary of. Fox News is incredibly compelling. If you switch between CNN and Fox, which is something I did a lot of when we were making this, and you spend enough time with that network, you really you can see how compelling and believable it becomes. So I think responsible journalism is essential. I think with social media, people have an opportunity to voice their own opinion and protect themselves a little more than when I first became well known, which was just a tabloid assault. Brexit, I don't know. I mean, how long have you got? How long have you got? I don't even know. Yes, it's a mess. It's a mess.
It's also separating when you're watching news and when you're watching entertainment. And I think that's one of the things that I learned from reading the book prior to doing the show is that there was an element of the entertainer in this guy when he created the news network, that people wanted to see heroes and villains. They wanted to see the simplicity of good and evil, and that's what he was going to give them. And a lot of times the casualty of that is the truth. And it's getting harder and harder to distinguish what is news and what is fiction, and particularly hard, for obvious reasons right now. But that's the scariest thing to me, is that line is being so blurred in so many ways, and people in many cases don't have the tools, the psychological tools, the intellectual tools to distinguish between those two, and that's a really hard thing to combat on a mass scale.
There's also a sense, I think, with Fox News and with right-wing radio that the further they push, the further they have to push, because it becomes normal quite quickly, and so they have to push the boundary even further and further and further, and that's why it gets more and more insane and dangerous seeming, because in order to keep more viewers, they have to be even wilder and crazier. That's not a question. More Fox News rantings, guys. Look, I love the show. I think you all did an amazing job. I think Russell's performance is fantastic. It's a really incredible performance. Thank you so much for being here. The show premieres June 30th on Showtime. Everybody, please give them a huge round of applause.